We are recording this session so that we can post it on the application website for others to reference later. So with that in mind, I'm going to run through about 15 to 20 minutes of slides just to keep that presentation portion really easily accessible for folks later on. And then after that, we'll open it up to any questions that you might have. Before we do dive in though, I'd like to do just 2 quick poll questions. I just want to get a sense of who's in the room and what are your top priorities for local food systems planning. I'm going to go ahead and launch that first poll now. So I know that many of us who do this work could really identify with more than one of these categories, probably, but just pick the one that best describes you as you're coming into this work today. Awesome. Okay, a couple of city officials, partner organization, farmers and gardeners. Thank you, especially for being here, taking time out of what I know are very busy days. Interested resident, other. Okay. Awesome. Well, it's a good mix of folks. Thank you all so much for joining. Oh, and I realized you could not see those results as I was looking at them. So here's a breakdown of who we've got with us today. And again, I'm sure many of these categories overlap. I know a lot of city officials or partner staff that are interested in this work are also avid farmers and gardeners, and also, of course, residents. So thank you for choosing one, and it's great to see a good mix of folks here with us today. I want to do one more quick poll question. Here we go. So I know this is a tough one to ask you to choose just one answer for, since all of these would be great to see in every city. But just for the sake of gauging priorities, just choose your top type of support that you'd be interested in seeing your city pursue as a top priority in local food systems planning as you're coming into this webinar today. All right, see some responses trickling in. We'll do about 20 more seconds. I know it's a hard choice. Okay. All right. So we see economic development measures rising to the top, and then pursuing sustainable stewardship measures. Those are both great. Also allocating city-owned land for growing spaces and internal policies like procurement standards. That's great. You know, these are all 5 and many more than these examples of city policy and programming that can be included in a city agriculture plan. And it's formalizing these type of recommendations and really tailoring them to meet individual city needs. That's the really exciting part of this work. Okay. So with that, we're going to dive in. So I assume if you're here today, you are somewhat familiar with this concept, but just to get us all on the same page, what is a city agriculture plan? Like other city plans, a city ag plan is really a set of short-term and long-term recommendations that provide a roadmap for a city to achieve its vision. And in this case, it's a vision for planning for a vibrant and sustainable local food system over the next 5 to 10 years. So we know that, you know, really supporting a growing local food system involves strengthening relationships between producers, processors, distributors, consumers, composters, the city itself, all these different stakeholders in the system. And the city ag plan process does that really intentionally throughout. It also importantly incorporates a community engagement piece to ensure that residents and local food leaders are really driving this process and identifying ways that local food can be integrated into their city's existing plans and programs. So knowing a little bit more about kind of what the plan is, you know, why is it important and why do we take the time to plan for this issue area specifically? Supporting local food systems through a formal city ag plan can really help to do a lot of things across an array of issues within a city. It can build community connections, support local ecosystems and soil health, increase access to healthy local food, and create entrepreneurial opportunities to really support the local economy. And a lot of the benefits that you see listed here, of course, kind of overlap and can be addressed by multiple recommendations within a plan. So for example, if you're looking at zoning to allow for on-site market garden or farm sales, that one creates a new and convenient market opportunity for growers. It provides a new point of sale for fresh and hyper-local food for residents in that neighborhood. And equally importantly, it just encourages community members to come out and engage with where and how their food is grown. And so I think that really tells the story of why I love doing this work at a local level. You really have the opportunity to look at a food system holistically. When you get up to the state or federal government levels, folks are pretty honed in on policies that address issues very specifically. You could spend a whole career looking at, just crop insurance for farmers or increasing emergency food distribution. And those are really important things to focus on. But at the local level, we're able to really, look at the big picture and work cross-departmentally and strategically leverage community assets to support growers, consumers, and the local ecosystem all at once. So with that understanding of kind of the broad benefits of investing in a local food system, let's really, take a minute to drill down and talk about the specific benefits that a city agriculture plan can bring to your city. At the top here, we see the primary outcomes of the process. First is going to be a community food system assessment. So Foodball Alliance, before we jump into the planning phase, we lead a really deep community engagement phase. And that produces a community asset map, which details all of the food and ag assets within a city. It entails a review of secondary data related to agricultural activity and food access in the community. And it incorporates an analysis of community feedback. So we lead multiple focus groups and have stakeholder surveys open for several months across the community. We take all that data, analyze it, and use that to determine community priorities for the planning phase. Of course, the process culminates in a city-approved city agriculture plan. So the Atlanta Regional Commission will produce a finalized and really beautifully formatted plan for presentation to city commissions and city council. Once that plan has actually been adopted by council, Foodball Alliance then steps back in and we award a $75,000 grant to the city for implementation of recommendations within the plan. And that funding is really unrestricted in terms of which recommendations, programs, or policies are pursued. We do encourage the city to either engage the planning steering committee or another cross-departmental group to prioritize those implementation projects. And then, down below, I think these are the less tangible outcomes of the process, but they're equally important. You're going to see increased community connectivity, which is always a benefit, but we really try to bring folks out to where food is being grown in their communities, visit the gardens, the farms, the orchards, the school gardens, highlight those that are doing the work within the community and lift up, that work that's already being done. And we also, try to spark peer-to-peer conversations through focus groups. Of course, we see increased engagement with city officials around local food systems issues through this process, and also the opportunity to really network with cities that are developing similar plans and initiatives, and the opportunity to think about regional connections in this issue area. So you might be wondering, where has this been done before? In the Metro Atlanta region, Foodball Alliance and ARC piloted this process with the city of East Point in 2019, and we've since expanded to develop a plan with the city of Alpharetta this year. But really thinking bigger than that, this work is part of a growing national trend to really plan intentionally for equitable and sustainable food systems. Since 2005, 18 states have developed state-level food systems plans, and as of earlier this year, another 11 have plans in development. Georgia is not one of them. So it's really important that more and more communities within Georgia really demonstrate this type of planning as a priority to help drive state-level action. Additionally, across the country, there are another 550 regional and local food systems plans that are active, and over 320 food policy councils. So those are coalitions of government officials, nonprofits, and growers that are working collectively to advocate for food policy change. So really, by taking part in City Agriculture Plan, your city would be helping to lead the Metro Atlanta region in what's really a growing national trend. As I mentioned before, East Point was the first city in the region to develop a city agriculture plan. And when we look back to 2019, when we first engaged with them, it's really incredible to see what they've achieved as part of this work. I've highlighted a couple of the main achievements here on this page. So the city, in partnership with Foodwell Alliance, received a $250,000 USDA Regional Food System Partnership grant for implementation of their plan. And as part of that grant, they were able to hire a local farmer as an urban agriculture manager to really facilitate the implementation of programs within their plan. They've done things like funding farmers market booth fees for producers at their market, funding a market feasibility study for a new cooperative grocery and shared kitchen space, and just really incorporating food and ag programming like farm tours and cooking demonstrations into city wellness initiatives. And I really wanted to highlight that piece because putting in the work up front to develop a city ag plan can also open up doors for additional funding. USDA, and there are other funding sources, of course, but they administer several grant programs, including the RFSP that East Point was able to tap into, that really focus on expanding access to local food and supporting urban agriculture. And if your city is able to include a formal plan and strong partnerships and grant proposals for those types of programs, it really signifies to funders that you have a level of intentionality and that your city has structures in place to guide implementation. And that can really strengthen additional grant applications. So it really does open up doors for more funding to really make this plan sustainable and make sure that it's not sitting on a shelf after that first initial Foodwell Alliance implementation grant may run out. East Point also formed a local food ecosystem commission. So this was huge. This is an appointed city body who are responsible for advising the mayor and council on local food issues. And we felt this was a really key step because this is a group that can ensure support for this kind of programming outlasts any individual supportive elected officials that are in office right now. The photo here highlights Mayor Ingram from East Point. She has been an incredible champion of this work, but we know that with any political initiative, it really ties back to individuals. So having a commission in place that exists in perpetuity and can ensure focus on this work going forward was really important to us, also to ensure the sustainability of the city ag plan. We've also worked to align the city ag plan with other ongoing work within East Point that focuses on health and equity. So there are other institutional partners that are doing great work there. And by really finding synergies with them, we're able to deepen our community outreach efforts and make sure that all of our work is as impactful as it can be within the city. So we're going to move on and talk about kind of the meat of the city ag plan, these priority areas. You'll notice that I didn't include a separate slide on Alpharetta, who was the second city to develop a city ag plan here in Metro Atlanta. Their plan has been developed, but it's still pending approval from City Council this fall. So we're still in early stages with Alpharetta. But I did just want to take a moment and really compare and contrast the main priority areas of these two plans. So listed here, you can see what were the priority areas for East Point and for Alpharetta. Each of these sections, is 20, 30 pages long. It contains multiple short-term and long-term recommendations. These are really the section headers of the plan. And they are listed here in order of community importance, as was established during the community engagement phases. So you'll see there's some really clear similarities and distinctions, and each city agriculture plan is really going to reflect the unique needs and priorities of the city that it's developed for. So each one of these is going to look different. And there are some key considerations listed here at the bottom that I think are really important to think about first if you're trying to imagine what these priority areas could look like for your city plan. I think first, what is your city's baseline, both in terms of city initiatives and organizational or grower presence? So who's already operating within your city? What are the community assets that you can leverage? For example, we worked with Alpharetta. They have a community agriculture program that's established through their Parks and Rec department. They're running a beautiful farm on city-owned land. This is, an incredible step that they've taken, and it's a really great model that we were able to work from in thinking about how to expand growing space across the city and kind of replicate that model. And also knowing that they have the staff capacity to really include consistent city oversight of those properties. So being able to build in Parks and Rec oversight in our plan's recommendations. Another consideration is really what are the immediate and long-term needs of the community as they relate to food access. So when we look back to East Point, kind of in our baseline of the city, we found that, according to census data, 91% of East Point residents live in designated low-income, low-access areas. So their ability to access fresh, healthy, and affordable foods is really significantly impacted. And that knowledge drove improving local food access as their plan's #1 priority. So their plan included recommendations for funding things like a healthy corner store initiative, a mobile market partnership, and support for an additional full-service grocery in the community. And kind of bringing that recommendation full circle, that's really why they're using some of those USDA grant funds to conduct a market feasibility study for the co-op that I mentioned earlier. And then one final consideration is really, what are the economic and environmental goals of the city that can be connected to food systems planning? So many cities' comprehensive plans already include goals around preserving green space or increasing Parks and Rec programming. And it's just important to think strategically about how farms, gardens, orchards, and other agricultural education opportunities can really be tied into those. Okay, so now that you're all hooked, here's the big question: how do you apply? The application process is detailed out on our website, and I would really encourage all of you to go click around on there if you haven't already done so. The application itself includes 6 broad questions that are really aimed at gauging city readiness and interest in helping to carry out the plan process, both through the community engagement phase and the planning phase. And we do ask this application is jointly submitted by at least one city official and one community member. And the intent of that is not to make this cumbersome, but we're really trying to make sure that conversations around this topic, around strengthening the local food system, are either started between city officials and residents for this process, or just continued on and deepened, whether your city is selected or not. Here we've got the 6 broad application questions. We did try to keep these pretty high level, but also have this be a productive exercise in really evaluating the state of a city's local food system. So these questions invite you to reflect on any ongoing programming, related city policy, or existing community assets, and also just encourage you to kind of vision for the future. So these questions are, of course, on our website as well. So how are cities selected once those applications are submitted? The applications are due by November 18th. And at that time, representatives from Foodwell and ARC will work together to select the next city. Preference is going to be given to cities that display, some of the criteria that are listed here in no particular order, but we've really found that these things are all assets and qualities that were really indicators of success for us in East Point and Alpharetta. And we think that they'll be indicators of, a productive process for the next city too. So these criteria include having committed city staff that can really keep the process moving along, and keep council and the mayor informed as we move through the process. Having enthusiastic residents that are excited to participate. We love to see a lot of folks coming out during the community engagement phase, sharing their feedback, and really making sure that the plan's priorities are rooted in resident feedback. Also having prior success planning with ARC and then adopting those developed plans, that's key. We don't want this plan to sit on a shelf. We want it to be actionable, and we want the city to be able to take that implementation grant and really hit the ground running once the plan is developed. And then also having diverse stakeholders that are interested in working together to leverage plan resources. So these can include things like community gardens, urban farms, school gardens, farmers markets, farm to table restaurants, really any local food and agricultural focused organizations that you think would be interested in participating in this process, and making sure that, again, a lot of these recommendations have support from multiple on the ground partners, and we can hit the ground running with implementation. I did also just want to note here that Foodwell Alliance serves a 5-county metro Atlanta area, but both of the first 2 cities that we've planned with have been in Fulton County. So we will be prioritizing applications from our 4 other counties for this application process. That's DeKalb, Gwinnett, Clayton, and Cobb counties for this round of applicants. Not to say that a city from Fulton County could not be selected, but we will be trying to kind of geographically spread the cities that we're planning with, just to increase opportunities for regional connections across our 5-county metro area. So thinking about what it looks like really if your city is selected, and what is the timeline over the next year? Based on the criteria that we just looked at, Foodwell and ARC will evaluate the applications and select the city that's really best situated to develop an impactful plan this year. The city would then move into signing an MOU with Foodwell and ARC, and a draft of the city's roles and responsibilities within that MOU can be found on our website. If you're interested in reviewing that or taking that as part of your case to your city officials, it's really not a big lift, but we do ask for an active city partner with really cross-departmental engagement. Foodwell Alliance would then launch the community engagement phase in the spring. And this is something that can really be tailored to your city's outreach strategies. We know that there are things that work best or ongoing in each of these cities, but it would likely include a bigger kickoff event to really introduce the program to the community. We'd have citywide surveys out for various stakeholder groups. So we'd look for feedback specifically from growers, of course, from food business leaders, from faith-based organizations, from school administrators and educators, really looking to get that holistic view of the food system. We'd also hold multiple focus groups to provide opportunities for in-person engagement, and hope to have a presence at ongoing city events as well. ARC would then kind of take over after that community engagement phase. They would take the lead on identifying appropriate city representatives to serve on the steering committee with several community leaders, and that group would then lead the formal planning process. Following the planning phase with ARC, the final city agriculture plan will be drafted and then ready for presentation to the city for approval. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up to questions, but I would like to do kind of one final quick poll to see where most of these questions are concentrated and make sure that we hit those priority areas. So let me launch that now. For those of you that are indicating that you've got specific questions about your city's readiness or what this process would look like specifically in your city, I think it would be most helpful to talk about those kind of one-on-one after the webinar. So I am going to follow up with an email either today or tomorrow to everyone that registered here today, and we can set up a time to kind of chat about those city-specific questions one-on-one. But if your questions are more broadly about the process or the application, we can address those, and feel free to start dropping those in the Q&A section, and we'll run through after this poll closes out. So I see we've got about half of folks responding. Give it another couple seconds. Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to see for a lot of you, I've covered the questions that you may have had coming into today. For those of you that do have those specific questions, again, I'm going to follow up with an email, and I would love to set up a time to talk through city-specific situations or concerns one-on-one. And I see we've got a few folks that are interested in how the plan is implemented. And to be fair, that is the area that we have the least amount of experience with, because we are on our second city ag plan now with Alpharetta. East Point is in the implementation phase, of course, but since they did receive the USDA Regional Food System Partnership Grant, we feel like their implementation process may not be replicable for cities moving forward. Really what that's going to look like is up to your city and the stakeholders that have been engaged in the process. Foodwell is going to award a $75,000 grant after the plan is adopted. And then again, we encourage the city to either re-engage the planning steering committee. So ideally that committee would have been made up of folks from the planning department, economic development, maybe parks and rec, along with community leaders who would really be able to, knowing what they do and having the experience of having gone through the planning phase, be able to prioritize implementation projects. Or the city could create, a cross-departmental kind of working group just within the city departments to really lead that implementation also. I see we've got one question in the Q&A from J. Olu. Looking at the language of the priority areas of East Point and Alpharetta, were priority areas from a predetermined list of options? How were they determined? That's a great question. So the priority areas of each plan were really distilled from the community engagement phase. So like I mentioned, we led multiple focus groups across both cities and really tried to make those accessible. So holding them at various times, having indoor, outdoor options, and then taking all the qualitative data from those focus groups, and then hundreds of surveys that were distributed across the city to those stakeholder groups that I mentioned. So growers, school administrators and educators and parents, faith-based organizations, food business leaders, city officials, and then general residents. We distilled all of that data down and tagged common themes that came out of their feedback. And then we organized the steering committee planning meetings around those themes. And so really those priority areas rose out of the resident feedback and priorities that we were hearing coming from the community, and then kind of concentrating recommendations within actionable groups. But Jill, if that doesn't get to the heart of your question, please feel free to unmute and we can talk through that too.
That was great. Thank you.
Great. If anyone else has questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or just unmute. We've got about 25 minutes left. I'm happy to talk through any parts of the process or the East Point or Alpharetta plans that may have stood out to you. Or you can always feel free to follow up with us at a later time as well, and we can chat one-on-one. I've got my contact information up here on the screen, and I'm happy to talk via email or phone, text, whatever works best for you. We really do hope to get a diverse array of cities applying for this round. So if there's any questions that I can answer or concerns I can address about the process, would really love to have a follow-up conversation. Any other questions rising to the top right now or comments? Otherwise, you guys are making my job easy for today. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here and spending a little bit of your day learning some more about city agriculture planning. I really appreciate your time and your engagement with this process. We are going to have a short 5-question survey that will pop up when you exit the Zoom. So if you could fill that out, that'd be great. That'd be very informative for us. And there will also be room within that survey as an option to include any specific or additional questions that you have. So we can follow up directly with you from that survey as well. So yeah, with that, we can wrap up. Thank you guys again for being here. And I really do hope to see applications coming in from a lot of your cities for this round. Those applications are due by November 18th. So if you have any questions, reach out, the sooner the better. With that, we will end for today. So thank you all so much.